Talked recently about living in Bad Axe and how interesting that was. It was a culture shock for me as a young man to move from Birmingham, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit, to a little tiny town like Bad Axe. But the interesting thing is that in later years, I lived in a town called Eau Claire. Now, I've talked about this on and off over the years. I've mentioned it from time to time. And some people who pay attention to what's behind me know that a long, long time ago, I was shooting my videos in a room that had a door behind me. And you'd occasionally see Milo and Wolfie walking through the background. Milo and Wolfie, the two Shetland sheepdogs that I had at one point in time. And then when Milo passed away, a little while after that, I moved to a little town called Eau Claire. And the interesting thing was I moved there primarily because I found a great deal on a house where somebody would let me have a dog. I was renting. And so I thought, okay, this is cool. A small town, but, I thought to myself, I don't know why, but I thought to myself, this might be a good experience for me. I actually thought that. And I was thinking of Bad Axe when I thought about moving to Eau Claire, and I thought, something? Maybe as I've gotten a little older and a little more mature, maybe I can handle the transition to a small town a little better. So I moved there, and I was in this little house. It was across the street from a park, the Water Tower Park. There's a water tower that says Eau Claire on the side of it. And I lived about 200 feet from the main drag through town. I could look out my window and see the hamburger place that did ice cream also, like an ice cream type place is only open in the summertime. Got to know that place really, really well. And so I moved into this town with Wolfie and just the two of us. And the first thing I started thinking about and noticing was that most people, when they see the name Eau Claire, assume it's pronounced Eau Claire. A town called Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And I think it's of French origin. But everybody I met said, oh, yeah, we love living here in Eau Claire. Eau Claire. And I would never correct anybody on how they pronounce their own hometown, but I started noticing this, and I thought to myself, well, I tell people I live in Eau Claire. Should I say Eau Claire? Because I think that my friends will correct me if I tell them that. So the interesting thing is one day I go in the post office. I go into the post office, and there's nobody else in there but me and the postmaster. And I go, I'm curious. E-A-U, next word C-L-A-I-R-E. How do you pronounce that? And she goes, she did that too. Empty post office. She goes, it's pronounced Eau Claire, but these people say Eau Claire. So I thought, well, if the postmaster can't give me a straight answer, who can? So one day I'm sitting in my living room watching TV, and a knock comes at the door. And I go out there and look, and there's a little kid selling candy for his Little League baseball team, and it has the name of his team across the front. It's the name of the town. And I pull out my wallet to buy some candy, because of course. And I said, by the way, how do you pronounce that? And he goes, Eau Claire, how do you pronounce it? I said, it's okay. I got you. So, interestingly, I didn't have many problems in town in respect of like just how small the town was. There were a couple occasions I had some minor little issues. I'm not sure if I've ever told this story before, but I lived, like I said, right near the main street, but not on it. And there was a big vacant lot, and then there was the ice cream place that had also sold hamburgers and stuff. And then next to that was a place called the Eau Claire Fruit Exchange, or the Eau Claire Fruit Exchange. And it was a basic hardware store, but it was a co-op, okay? So I used to go in there from time to time, and they had chocolate-covered cherries in season. Oh my God, they were so good. Another story altogether. But one night, I'm laying in bed about 2 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden, this alarm starts going off. And I realize it's an alarm over at the fruit exchange. And the area, by the way, was really, really big on apple orchards and a couple other types of fruits, cherry orchards too. But the fruit exchange, I guess, was a co-op for the people who grew those originally, and then it just kind of evolved. And this alarm goes off for like 45 minutes, and it's like an air raid siren just going off. And eventually it stops. So I thought to myself, okay, somebody came and turned the alarm off. It must have misfired. It happened every single night for like 10 days in a row. Now, I'm in a small town. I don't want to make waves, but I'm like, I can't deal with this. And I had to go to court one day. And the night before I had to go to court, I get all my stuff ready. I go to bed, set my alarm. 2 o'clock in the morning, this darn alarm goes off over there at the fruit exchange. Now I'm thinking to myself, every time it goes off, it goes for 45 minutes. Is someone shutting this thing off? So I actually got dressed. I walked over there. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. And the town is just dead. And there's an alarm just going off. Nobody. And eventually it just shuts itself off like it cried itself to sleep. So the next day I went to court. I was all dressed up and I thought, dude, you got the suit on, use it. So I drove over to the police station, which is like 3 blocks, not even 3 blocks, like 3 doors down across on the other side of the street. Actually, it was a block or 2 down now that I think about it. On the other side of the street, and I walk in there, and there's a police station, city hall, one building, there's like one person at the desk. For all I know, they may be the mayor. And I said, I need to speak to somebody. I'm not sure who, but I go that Eau Claire Fruit Exchange alarm goes off every single night. I don't know what's triggering it, but there's something wrong. But last night it went off at 2 o'clock in the morning, ran for 45 minutes, and I got to be at court this morning, and I was a little upset. And the woman behind the counter said, well, we're aware of this, but thank you for letting us know. But if you'd like to, you can go talk to the manager. And she tells me the manager's name because everybody knows everybody. So I go, okay. So I get back in my car and I turn around and I drive 100 yards up and park my car again. And I walk into the co-op. And I walk in and I say, hey, is so-and-so here? And the woman at the front who knows me goes, yeah, he's in his office. I walk towards the guy's office, stick my head around the window, and he looks at me, he goes, I got the message. It won't happen again. Now, he didn't know who I was. I'd never spoken to him before. He'd never seen me before. But apparently the police had called and said, hey, you finally got somebody to come in, you're ticked off. And I go, well, I'm just curious. Like, is it a false alarm? Is it defective? What's wrong with it? And he goes, well, it's being set off by something. We're not sure what. We have a call at the alarm company right now. He goes, the problem is when it gets set off, someone's got to come in here and shut it off. And I said, okay. And he goes, I live more than 45 minutes away. I said, oh. He goes, so it shuts off just as quickly if I come down here and do it because it'll get shut off by the time I get here. And I said, okay. I said, but the only reason I'm complaining, I said, dude, don't get me wrong. I love this town. I love the co-op. I shop here all the time. I said, but I live, and I could point. I go, I live in that house right there. You can see it out the window. I live in that house right there. I was the person in the house closest to the co-op, and it's me. You're the one who're waking up with that alarm. He goes, it'll never happen again. And it didn't. So I don't know if it was me actually walking in wearing a suit and a tie. I don't know. That may have done it, but that was the last time that alarm ever went off that I know of where it shouldn't have. Now, I have to tell you that the small town, some of the stuff I found creepy and bad acts where everyone knew my business. I just learned to embrace that in this town. So, obviously I've got a bright green mountain bike. And so I expect that people to say, oh, hey, there's a guy on the mountain bike. That's Steve. He lives over by the hamburger stand, that kind of thing. I decided that was going to be something I could deal with. Funny part was I had Wolfie with me. And so I take Wolfie for walks quite a bit. We'd walk around the park. There was a couple woodchucks there that he had issues with, but he never resolved them. And occasionally we'd walk through town. And one day I walked into the bank because I could walk to the bank from my house. And the woman said, where's your dog? I always see you walking this beautiful dog. And I said, oh, that's Wolfie. She said, well, where is he? And I said, well, I'm conducting business right now. She goes, oh, you can bring him in here. I said, really? She goes, yeah, bring him in. So the next time I had banking business, I walked down the street with Wolfie. Wolfie and I used to walk by the bank all the time. Suddenly we're turning into the bank. I open up the door and Wolfie's like, what are we doing here? I go, we're going inside, my friend. He goes, okay. And he steps in. We open the other door. He steps in. He's kind of like, okay, never been in here before. And I walk up to the counter and woman's like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful dog. So I pick Wolfie up. He doesn't like to be picked up, but I picked him up. She pats him on the head. She gives him a milk bone. I conduct my business. From that day forward, if I didn't bring Wolfie with me to the bank, they would complain. Where is Wolfie? It became like Doc Hollywood, where he's walking down Main Street. Hey, nice pig, Doc. And I'd actually have people yelling, hey, Wolfie, hey, Steve. That's kind of cool. And I used to go over to the hamburger stand, and they had picnic tables outside. Sit at a picnic table. He'd sit at my feet knowing full well he's going to get something when I'm done. And I taught him and Milo specifically never to beg. You're not going to get food if you beg. Just sit there quietly. When I'm done, I'll take care of you. And they learned to trust me on that. So I'd often sit at the hamburger stand with Wolfie, and I'd be eating my food, and people come by, hey, Wolfie, how you doing? Hey, Steve, how you doing? I could tell most of them were glad to see Wolfie, but not so much about me, apparently. But so we lived there for a while. But sadly, Wolfie passed away while I lived in Eau Claire. And towards the end there, And people who've had dogs know this, that as they get older, they start having issues. Wolfie was having trouble with his hearing and also trouble with his eyesight. And of course, as a dog, younger dogs have got great eyesight, great hearing, great sense of smell. And Wolfie would occasionally need to go outside early in the morning, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. So I would be very, very conscious of the fact that if the Wolfie got up, and he'd often come over and nose me, he'd poke me with his nose to indicate he needed to go outside. And so I'd put a leash on him, I'd grab a flashlight and a bag just in case he did his business someplace I couldn't leave it, because I do clean up after my dogs. And we would walk, and depends on what time of night it was, whether it was raining or not, snowing out. But if it was a nice summer night, we might walk across to the park and just do a perimeter walk around the park. And that, of course, is how I know he had issues with some of the animals over there. But occasionally we'd also just walk around the block. And I remember, for instance, one morning at about 3 o'clock in the morning, summer evening, summer night, dark out, but it was warm. And it was early in the summer. And Wolfie starts pulling really hard towards something. He's picked up a scent. He can't smell it. He can't hear it, and he can't see it, but he can smell it. And he's pulling towards a tree. And there's this huge, I believe it's a walnut tree, gigantic walnut tree. And he's pulling towards the walnut tree. I'm thinking, okay, it's a squirrel. But of course, this is the middle of the night. And so he's doing that thing where a dog gets all excited, poking around. And dogs let their nose to the ground because that's where the scent is. And what they're looking for is right here. And there's a baby raccoon. Baby raccoon, 6 feet off the ground, clinging to the side of the tree, looking at me kind of like, what are you doing? And I'm like, okay, cool. I like raccoons. So Wolfie spotted the raccoon, but he couldn't find it. And so eventually we just finished our walk and went around the block the rest of the way. And I came out the next day and the raccoon was gone. That's cool, whatever. And its mother was probably nearby, but you never know these things. And a day or two later, I actually saw the raccoon in the tree. And I went and got one of those red Solo plastic cups, filled it with dog food, and put it at the base of the tree, because that's one thing raccoons love is dog food. And came by a little while later, and the cup was still there, upright, but empty, because the raccoon had come down, eaten it all, and put the cup back. So that's what raccoons do. But we would take him. I would take him on these nighttime walks around town. Occasionally, we'd walk through town at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm the only person out. It's kind of neat to see that. And then I can tell you that one night I was riding, I think I was riding my bike in the evening, and I was a couple blocks back from the main street, but I was looking at Main Street, and all of a sudden I heard this rumbling, and I look, and it's like a vision. It's a 1970 white Hemi Cuda just idling by, it disappears off in the darkness. And I'm like, did I just see a 70 Hemi Cuda go by at like midnight or whatever time it was? And Wolfie was not with me, so I couldn't ask him. And a couple of days later, I'm riding my bike around town, just riding around, and I see a guy at his garage, and he's got the door open, white Hemi Cuda. And so I circle back, I put my bike down very carefully, not to bring it any place near the car. And I said, excuse me, sir, is that your car? And he goes, yeah. And I said, it's a beautiful car. I think I saw you driving it through town a couple nights ago, and I didn't know if you were local or not. He goes, oh, yeah. He goes, I've got a place out of town also where I keep stuff, a barn, but I've got the house here in town. Became very good friends with Richard. Richard owned the Hemi Cuda. And I told him where I lived, and I said, next time you got the car out, let me know. I'd love to see it out when it's out running around. And I was hinting that I wanted to ride. And he came by one night, and the reason I know that is watching TV, and all of a sudden there's out in the driveway. I grabbed my GoPro camera as I go walking out there, and he goes, you want to go for a ride? And I said, absolutely. I go, do you mind if I film it? He goes, knock yourself out. Fired the cameras up, filmed it, and we drove a couple miles. We're talking about the car, and then he goes, do you want to drive it? And I'm like, yes, I do. And he let me drive the car for a couple miles, an authentic 70 Hemi Cuda. Very, very cool experience. Very, very cool car. Richard's passed away. I heard from his relatives a little while back that he passed away. Very sorry to hear that. I have not seen him since I left Eau Claire. But anyway, getting back to just my life in town, walking around town and so on. But unfortunately, Wolfie passed away while I lived there in 2017. And it was very sad because I would go someplace for the first time and they'd say, "Where's Wolfie?" And I say, "I'm sorry, he passed away." And the woman at the bank burst into tears. And I understood how she felt, but I never expected that. And I remember going to the hamburger stand, and Christine, the owner, I was very good friends with her and her kids, and she had a daughter, a really cute little girl who loved to come over and say hello to Wolfie. And I came by the hamburger stand one day, and I said, "Wolfie passed away." And she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I said, "Yeah, and we got to be careful now how we address this around your child, you know?" And she's like, "Oh my gosh, you're right." But luckily, the next few times I came by there, she was not there at the store with her mother, or at the stand with her mother. But yeah, so it was interesting because later on I moved out of there. I moved a few times since then. But if you're watching old videos of mine and you see where I've got two bookcases behind me, two narrower bookcases, that's Eau Claire. And there's a sloped roof behind me because I'm upstairs in a house shooting those videos. And I forgot what season that would have been, like season 3 or 4 maybe. I'm not sure how many of those videos are still up. But I had a great time in that town, and I'm so glad I did that because, I'm currently living in a larger town. I don't know if I'll ever live in a small town like that again. But I had spent years thinking of Bad Axe as small town, and I'd always had these memories of how, at the time, out of place I felt. And it took me as an adult, decades later, to move in to a small town and go, okay, I'm here, let's embrace it and see if we enjoy it. And it turns out I did. So notwithstanding the issue with a false alarm at the co-op, and notwithstanding the woodchucks that used to taunt Wolfie, it was a great place to hang out. Eau Claire, Michigan. It's down here. It's not far from Berrien Springs, where Muhammad Ali actually had a place. And also it's not far from Niles, Michigan, home of Tommy James and the Shondells. So I got to do a lot of exploring in that area. That is also not far from the area where I found the belt buckle that I did the video about, and that was the same time frame that happened. So there you go, life in Eau Claire, Michigan. Me and Wolfie. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.